They experimented on their own people. In the middle of the Cold War, a secret program began, not to fight enemies, but to control minds. They used drugs, hypnosis, psychological torture, and the most disturbing part, many of the subjects didn't even know they were part of it. This was MK Ultra, one of the most controversial experiments in history. After the end of World War II, the world did not become peaceful as many had hoped. Instead, it entered a new kind of conflict, one that was quieter, more psychological, and far more dangerous. The battlefield was no longer defined only by weapons or territory, but by influence, control, and the fragile nature of the human mind. During the early years of the Cold War, the United States became increasingly concerned about the possibility that its enemies were developing methods of mind control. Reports, rumors, and intelligence briefings suggested that prisoners could be manipulated, memories could be altered, and individuals could be made to act against their own will. Whether these reports were fully accurate or partially exaggerated did not matter. The fear they created was real, and it was enough to justify action. In 1953, under the authority of Allen Dulles, the Central Intelligence Agency approved a highly secretive program that would later become known as MK Ultra. This program was not publicly announced, nor was it subject to ethical review. It operated in complete secrecy, hidden behind layers of classification and disguised funding. Officially, its purpose was to explore the limits of human cognition and behavior. Unofficially, its goal was far more unsettling: to discover whether the human mind could be broken down, controlled, and rebuilt according to external commands. The program expanded rapidly, reaching into universities, hospitals, and research institutions across the country. Many of these organizations were unaware that they were participating in a covert operation. Experiments were conducted under the guise of legitimate research, while in reality they were part of a much larger and more dangerous system. MK Ultra was not a single experiment, but a network of interconnected projects, each designed to explore different methods of psychological manipulation. And once this system was set in motion, it became increasingly difficult to control, growing beyond its original scope and entering territories that no one fully understood. As the MK Ultra program developed, its methods became more invasive and increasingly controversial. What began as observation soon turned into direct experimentation, and in many cases, these experiments were conducted without the knowledge or consent of the subjects involved. One of the primary tools used in these studies was LSD, a powerful hallucinogenic substance capable of profoundly altering perception, emotion, and cognitive function. When administered, it could distort reality to such an extent that individuals would lose their sense of time, identity, and control over their own thoughts. Subjects exposed to these substances often reported intense hallucinations, paranoia, and psychological distress. In some cases, the effects were temporary, fading after a period of time. In others, however, the damage appeared to be long-lasting, fundamentally changing the way individuals perceived the world around them. Despite these risks, the experiments continued, driven by the belief that understanding these effects could lead to new forms of psychological control. In addition to chemical methods, researchers employed a range of other techniques designed to weaken the human mind. Hypnosis was used in attempts to access and manipulate the subconscious. Isolation was implemented to strip individuals of external reference points, leaving them disoriented and vulnerable. Sleep deprivation pushed subjects to the edge of physical and mental exhaustion, reducing their ability to resist suggestion. Repetition and sensory overload were used to disrupt normal thought patterns, creating confusion and instability. The ultimate objective was not healing or scientific understanding, but control. The aim was to determine whether a person's will could be erased and replaced with something entirely new. However, the results were far from predictable. Instead of achieving consistent control, researchers often encountered chaos, emotional breakdowns, and unintended consequences that they could neither fully explain nor manage. Yet despite these outcomes, the program continued, driven by the belief that success was still possible. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the MKUltra program was not the methods it used, but the people it affected. Contrary to what one might expect, the subjects were not enemy agents or captured spies. They were ordinary individuals, including students, patients, and everyday citizens who had no idea they were part of a classified experiment. While some participants may have volunteered for what they believed to be harmless studies, many others were unknowingly exposed to procedures that would have lasting psychological effects. One of the most well-known cases associated with the program is that of Frank Olson, a scientist who had professional connections to the project. In the period leading up to his death, Olson began exhibiting unusual behavior, including confusion, anxiety, and signs of severe psychological distress. Not long after these changes were observed, he fell from a hotel window under circumstances that were officially described as a suicide. However, as more information became available in later years, questions began to arise regarding the true nature of his death. Investigations suggested that Olson may have been unknowingly exposed to psychoactive substances as part of the program. This raised the possibility that his mental state had been directly influenced by the same experiments he was involved in. For his family and for many others, this case became a symbol of the ethical failures and human cost associated with MKUltra. As awareness of the program slowly increased, families and researchers began seeking answers. Yet the deeper they looked, the more difficult it became to uncover the truth. Records were incomplete, testimonies were limited, and key details remained hidden. The full extent of the program's impact on its subjects may never be completely understood, leaving behind a legacy defined as much by what is unknown as by what has been revealed. By the early 1970s, growing public concern and political pressure led to investigations into the activities of the intelligence community. As these inquiries began, attention gradually turned toward programs like MKUltra, raising serious questions about their legality, ethics, and overall impact. For the first time, there was an opportunity to examine what had been hidden for so many years. However, just as investigators began to uncover evidence, a significant portion of the program's documentation was deliberately destroyed. Thousands of files, which could have provided critical insight into the scope and methods of MKUltra, were eliminated. This act of destruction ensured that much of the program's history would remain inaccessible, leaving only fragments behind. The surviving documents were enough to confirm that the program had existed and that it had involved a wide range of controversial experiments. Yet, they were not sufficient to provide a complete picture. Many questions remained unanswered, including the full number of subjects involved and the long-term effects of the procedures used. Officially, MKUltra was terminated, and its activities were brought to an end. But the idea that such a program could simply disappear has continued to raise doubts. If methods of psychological influence and control were once considered valuable enough to justify such extensive research, it is difficult to determine whether they were truly abandoned or simply transformed into something less visible. As a result, MKUltra remains not only a historical event, but also a subject of ongoing discussion and concern. It serves as a reminder of how far institutions may go in the pursuit of control and how easily ethical boundaries can be crossed when secrecy and fear are combined.